welcome everybody. We are live with the community here in Orlando at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference. This is the Viva Connections and SharePoint Framework bi-weekly sync. Today is May 2nd. It's gonna be May. I'm not Justin, but it'll do. All right, welcome everybody online as well. We are so glad to have you here with us today. And if we can get the slides to move, there we go. What is our agenda for today? Well, we're going to talk about a number of community project updates, PNP.js, CLI, developer proxy, SPFx controls, toolkit for VS Code, as well as PNP search web parts and new samples. So lots to talk about. And then we're going to have two incredible presenters of the day sitting up front. Hugo Bernier is going to show how to set up your SPFx Developer workstation without admin permission. So you can now take control of your device, no matter who the admin is. Paolo Pialorsi is going to cover building complex SPFX powered solutions with Microsoft 365, the possibilities, the limits, and the opportunities. Dun, dun, dun. So we're excited. First, let's cover what resources are available to each and every one of you on the call and in person. These are 100% free by the community for the community. We've got videos, we've got LinkedIn groups for discussions, we've got projects and initiatives that make your Microsoft 365 technologies work even better, like PNP.js, like CLI, which we'll talk about today. And we've got tons of samples that are available to each and every one of you. Again, created by the community for the community, absolutely free, no cost at all. And we don't even accept tips. So even if you tried, we'd have to reject you. All right, so all you got to do is remember one URL to rule them all. That's ak.ms/community/home. And that will give you access to all of the goodness that is available. We've just got a brand new site that is available. So we invite you all to go take a look. And if you're here, it's because you like community calls. If you're online, it's because you like community calls. So we appreciate that. We've got plenty of community calls available to you. Our weekly Microsoft-only speakers call, that means you're going to get it directly from the horse's mouth, directly from the mothership. Those product managers, those program managers are going to be available to teach you all about the great technologies that we love. And then, of course, we've got our monthly Power Platform call. We've also got our Office add-ins and our sibling calls. So this SPFX and Viva Connections that you're in right now, along with the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform development. That'll be next week. You can get access to all these calls at ak.ms/community/calls. Make sure you download the invite, get that on your calendar so that you can be reminded. That's the best way to keep in touch. And next week, speaking of that Tuesday call, we've got a couple of presenters. I think we might be booking a third, actually, so stay tuned for that. But Vesa and myself will be here to entertain you. We're going to do
in here.
Well, not here. We'll be here in the call, yeah. The proverbial here. We will be here in this digital space that we all love. We're going to be synchronized swimming, actually. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. We're going to be covering things like Power Platform, animation tips and techniques. And then Vesa is going to cover the intro to updated card designer experience in Connections. So definitely be ready for that. It's going to be awesome. And if any one of you in the room has ever been, how many of you have actually been on the community calls before? All right, so a couple of you, it's brand new. This is something that we do all the time. We want you to know that you can present on these calls, right? Now, normally, they're very rare that we're doing it in person like this. It's a great opportunity, so you'll be able to tell your grandkids all about it. It's exciting, but we welcome anybody and everybody in the community to present. It is absolutely something that you are all capable of doing, whether you're online right now or in the room. If you've got a cool utility or a technique or a tip or a trick that you want to share, absolutely, we welcome that. And we'll even help you. So we'll buddy up with you if you feel like you need some presentation assistance, and we will work together. All you got to do is go to the aka.ms/community/request/demos. I know it rolls right off the tongue. You're going to remember it forever, but you could also take a photo. And we will get back to you on scheduling that. So take advantage of it. And if you want to contribute to the community, we have an initiative called Sharing is Caring. Now, this is a unique opportunity to work live with other members of Microsoft and MVPs in the community. What it allows you to do is understand in a live session how to do things like submit a pull request to GitHub. It is not recorded, so it's a 100% free space. You're able to ask any and all questions without that fear of, should I already know the answer to this? Does everybody else know the answer to this? No, every question is safe because we don't record it, and is a collaborative opportunity to meet other like-minded, passionate individuals in the community just like yourself. So take advantage. We have our next samples contributor on May 20th. I believe it's at 9 a.m. Pacific because the screen is really small, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So sign up, 100% free. Again, live, great opportunity. Hugo will be there. I'll be there. Vesa might be making a drop in as well. So great opportunity to walk out feeling confident and ready to contribute. And then once you do contribute, we want to recognize you. So our recognition program is powered by Credly. Yes, that same Credly that used to give you badges for your certifications, we still give you those. So it is absolutely free. We are just renewing our relationship with Credly. There's a variety of ways to get involved, and it's fantastic because you will actually get accredited badges. They are from Credly. You can associate them to your LinkedIn profile, put them on Twitter. You can put them in the Christmas cards. You can send them to mom, put them on the fridge. Everybody's going to be proud of you because we know we are. So sign up. We do need you to opt in. When you do that, you only need to do it once, and we will track you forever and ever in GitHub. Don't worry, we're not going to actually stalk you. All right, and then we'll keep track and send you those badges that you can share and put onto your resume. Now let's get into some SharePoint Framework updates, and we will begin with Vesa.
Thank you. This is weird that we're in the same room.
I know, it's
and I can see more than 100 people again online. So this is really, really cool. So first of all, SharePoint Framework 1.19 was generally released yesterday, day before yesterday, last day of March. So that's the great new update in here, which is really cool. Now, in general, if you go to the following slide, SPFx usage is still growing heavily. So if you're wondering, are people writing stuff with SPFx? Answer is yes. So Power Platform, absolutely brilliant option. There's a lot of other options as well. SharePoint Framework absolutely is being used, and the usage is growing significantly. I think they set 200 million user interactions every single month for custom components. Something super weird what they said it in a
per millisecond, I think.
Millisecond, yeah. Yes, probably. That's the right way of saying that. But yeah, the usage is growing, which is really cool. Let's go to the following slide. A quick recap on the roadmap. So 1.19 went live on April 13th. That's the latest version. Really, the new thing there was the chart card for Viva Connections, which is now available to take advantage. And then technical stack updates, like Webpack 5 is a big thing for a lot of the developers. We did not update TypeScript or React, and we do apologize on that. We have a dependency on Microsoft internal people to update them as well, but hopefully we'll get that one done in 1.20. 1.20 is already ongoing, and I know that new chart types, for example, pie and donuts, which makes you always hungry, are coming within the 1.20, and then other updates as well for the SharePoint Online side as we get stuff ready to get shipped. But that's a quick recap from our side. Really, really big focus on the engineering is SPFx and Copilot integration scenarios. More on that a bit later.
Awesome. Tell me more about those donuts. Do they come with sprinkles?
Absolutely. Sprinkles, yes.
SPFx sprinkles. Who doesn't love SPFx sprinkles? All right, let's get into some open source projects. We are going to kick it off with PNP.js. Now, our maintainers are all traveling right now. They're heading home. They were here yesterday, Bo and Julie and Patrick. So they did just release version 4.0, just released last week, I think. It's in GA, exciting. If you're not familiar with PNP.js and you're doing SPFx delivery, this is kind of like jQuery, but a billion times better, right? It's an open source library that helps you connect to your data in much easier ways and much more than that. Check it out. There is all kinds of information at aka.ms/PNP.js. And CLI, Gary, we got you live.
You do, yes. Thank you, David. So we have a new stable release of CLI for Microsoft 365. This is version 7.7. So we have new commands for Microsoft Entra ID. So if you're doing things with privileged identity management, you can now manage role assignments, list them, and one extra update that we've made as well, if you're creating app registrations using the CLI command to do that, we've now added support for public client flows as well. So you can now configure that through the CLI. We have a SharePoint embedded command as well. So I think this is the first one that we've got that allows you to create a new container type as well. As usual, we've got updates to SharePoint Framework, support for the new beta release, as well as being able to publish content types from the Content Type Hub on SharePoint Online. So if you want to get hold of this latest release, you should be using the latest tag from NPM, or if you want to use our Docker container, again, use the latest tag to get the latest version of CLI in Docker. As always, there's lots of other updates, so check out the release notes, aka.ms/CLI-M365/notes, and you'll get all the details from there. If you are not a member of our Discord server, you want to join our community, then pop along to aka.ms/CLI-M365/Discord to join the server and get involved in our community. Next slide, please, David. So we have a new release of DevProxy as well. So we have version 0.17.1. So this new version comes with integrations for Azure API Center. So if you're using Azure API Center to govern the APIs in your organization, you can now use DevProxy to check if an API in your app is actually registered in your API Center. And we've gone a step further as well, just to make sure that of those APIs that you are using production APIs as well. So really interesting integration that we've got there. Looking to do more in this space. If you're interested, we'd love to hear from you as well about what might be useful. We've had an update to our mock response plugin. So previously you could match a request on just the URL, the method that was used and the URL, but now you can do the body as well. So if you're sending multiple requests to the same endpoint, and you want to match on a particular part of the body, you can do that as well. We've made it easier for you to download and install DevProxy. So thank you to everyone who gave us feedback in the focus groups that we ran recently. One of the biggest issues that we found was just getting started. So we've solved that by now giving you packages in Winget and in Homebrew. So that is support for stable releases and beta releases as well. So we hope that that is going to make sure that you can get using proxy in the easiest way possible. We've got a new release of the DevProxy toolkit, which is our Visual Studio Code extension. We're looking at the next release end of June, and we will be at ECS in the upcoming weeks. So if you are going to ECS, come and say hello. Come to our session as well. We'd love to talk to you. And David, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. All right, folks, let's move on to reusable SPFx controls. So again, if you are an SPFx developer, don't recreate the wheel. These are some of those resources that we were telling you about that are absolutely free. So if you're building web parts or extensions, some of these are going to be able to allow you to add in functionality to your web parts in that property pane or in the output of your web part that makes things easier. Again, the point is reusability. So React controls 3.17 are available and the property controls are 3.16. Lots of work is going into this, so definitely take advantage, but it's also a great opportunity for you all to contribute. So again, another one of those areas to be able to contribute. And of course, we've got our SharePoint Framework toolkit for VS Code. Adam, tell us more.
Yeah, so if you're doing any kind of SPFx, be sure to try those reusable controls and this VS Code extension as well, because it will help you extensively on many of the stages of your development, like from getting started and learning SPFx to helping you code and shipping it to production, like even scaffolding a CI/CD pipeline with a few clicks for your project. It has a totally new experience when it comes to creating new solutions, either from scratch or based on samples and many, many more. So be sure to use this extension if you are doing SPFx, so you are developing some solution using SharePoint Framework, either for Teams, for Outlook, or of course for SharePoint and other areas. And we just had a new minor release 0.1, which is a sum up of two pre-releases we had before with a small bug fix that was done by Dan and as an action rename that was done by Nico. Thanks a lot for your contributions. You all rock, and we welcome contributors. We are currently, I think, more or less 20 help wanted easy issues to get started. So if you want to help us create the best SharePoint framework tooling in the world and learn VS Code extensibility, be sure to go and visit our repository, this aka.ms/viva/VS Code. And happy coding, everybody. Back to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. All right. Next, we're going to go on to PNP. Ooh, fancy PNP Modern Search with Casper, the friendly contributor. Casper, tell us more.
Okay, thank you, David. We had to release a interim version like two days ago because some guy have messed up the Danish translation, so I cannot really release who it was, but it could have been me. So we had to release a new version right away. But then again, it showed us how often it's used even here in Denmark. So we are also really proud of our new live card. That you see here. It is exactly the same as you see all over Microsoft 365, and we have it available straight out of the box for everything people related. So give it a twirl and let's see how it will work. And you can modify it, but it will be across your entire tenant if you are starting to mess around with the live people card. Back to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Casper. And leading into our final slides before we get into the demos, PnP SPFx samples. So again, we had mentioned to you all that there are web parts and extensions available to you, as well as ACEs, which we'll talk about in a moment with Anoop. But these are managed by Hugo here, who's in the room and going to be doing a demo. These are absolutely free. They are community created for the community by the community, and you can contribute to them. So don't feel like if someone created something and you got a great idea to add to it that you can't do that. Absolutely can do that. Reach out to them, find out who the owners of that particular sample are, and collaborate with them. And you're going to be able to work together and make some new friends. I know that's how Hugo and I got connected, and we've been there ever since. All right, so let's talk about some ACEs. And for those that might not be familiar, Anoop, tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, David. So ACEs, with the Viva connections that you have in your organization, that can be personalized and extended. And one way of doing that is through ACEs or adaptive card extensions. Now these ACEs, they enable the users to view information quickly at a glance, and also help the users interact with the information through the form of adaptive cards. Now, the information surfaced by these ACEs can be from different systems within your organization, say, for example, annual leave system or expenses system, or it can surface information from external sources as well. Microsoft provides some of the ACEs out of the box, and we can create our own custom ACEs using SPFx. Such custom ACEs have been created by the community members and have been put into this repository called as aka.ms/spfx-aces. So do take a look at that repository for some very cool samples. And if you have any samples that you would like to share, please contribute to this repository. Thank you. Back to you, David.
Awesome, thank you, Anoop. And for those that I don't know if Anoop is adaptive card extensions, right? So it allows you to bring those adaptive card extensions into your SPFX solution, which is a great way to utilize all the technology. All right, well, it is time for us to get those fantastic faces ready. So what we'll do is for those online, turn those cameras on, and we'll get the I don't know my sound effects, so I'm just making them up. Vesa is going to capture the together mode.
I'm trying to do this here. Let's see how this actually works again. Oh, we can see a lot of people in the screen.
Awesome.
And if you, no, you cannot show what. Yeah, never mind. But we do have 100, and for people in the room, we do have 150 people online, and we are not yet recording. Let's wait for 50 people, which max. I can see SharePoint Monkey online as well. That's really, really cool. And we are pixel perfect today. This is great. We will capture the video with Hugo on the room, and then we'll combine this to get a picture. And Leonis already can't wait until we start recording. I can see that. Now, and Stephanie is already doing waves there as well. Let me put the recording on. So 3, 2, 1. Let's do some hand waving, everybody. Woo! Yay! We'll combine the feeds into a new one GIF combined for both of these. This is really, really cool. Excellent. Thanks, everybody, for this one. Let's move them back onto normal scheduled show.
All right, back to your regularly scheduled program. We are going to begin with our amazing presenters. The first is Hugo Bernier, one of our favorite Canadians, who is getting his mic set up right now. And he will be taking over the screen share. He is going to talk about setting up your SPFx Developer workstation without admin permissions, which is a fantastic use case for all of us.
Hopefully nobody in the room was in the witness relocation program.
You go. All these years we thought it was Vesa. Yeah, can we get thumbs up if Hugo can be heard? He should be able to. You have to talk though.
Yeah. Well, yes, I was talking before.
Yeah, thumbs up.
All right. All right, I don't screen, so let me just do this quickly. All right, hello everyone. My name is Hugo Bernier. I'm a member of the Patterns and Practices team, and I'm also the world's laziest developer. And every one of these conferences, we usually do a workshop on how to get started with SPFx. And we hear a lot of things. We hear a lot of feedback. For example, I thought Bo would be taller. While we started building an SPFx solution, and that's not cool. So today we're going to talk about how to use your, I can get my clicky thing to work. There you go. How to use your secured workstation and to configure SPFx to be able to start building web parts. It is possible. It's just not really documented in the regular documentation on how to do SPFx development. Now, a little disclaimer here. Please consult your organization's policies on what you're allowed to install and not, right? So what I'm trying to do here is not to teach you how to circumvent the policies that the organization have put on your workstation, but to make it possible for you, if it is supported by your organization, for you to be able to start working without having to require administrative privileges to your workstation. So that's a big difference here that my lawyers have advised me to make sure I was saying. All right, so the other reason why you might want to configure your workstation the way I'm going to talk to you about is if you're working as a team. Because one of the things that if you haven't used SPFx yet, every version of SPFx works with potentially a different version of Node.js. So if you're working with a team and maybe you're managing someone else's web part, right? And they built it 6 months ago on an older version of SPFx, they might be using a completely different version of Node.js. So what if you want to build something in the latest version of SPFx at 1.19, which uses the latest supported version of Node, and then in the afternoon you need to go do a fix on a web part that was built 6 months ago. The last thing you want to do is have to upgrade the web part to go make that little change. So you need the ability to switch back and forth between versions of Node. And here's an example of the SPFx matrix, where we show you every version of SPFx and every version of Node that's supported. And you can get to that by going to aka.ms/SPFx matrix. And if you look a little bit down the page, let me zoom in here, you'll see the version 1.19 supports version 18 of Node. But if I go look at an older version of SPFx here, 17.2 supports version 16.3. So this is the perfect example of what I'm showing you. We're not talking about years and years of difference between versions here. We're talking about potentially months sometimes. So how do we deal with that? Well, here's the problem. When you install Node on your machine, let's say you had administrative privileges or your organization was kind enough to install Node for you, they'll install a version of Node on your C program files Node.js. But the problem is you can only have one version of Node installed at once, which is kind of annoying, right? Especially if you're trying to switch back and forth. And to be clear, I don't ever advise anyone to just go randomly take an older version of a web part and upgrade it just to make minor changes, right? Because why? I remember I'm the world's laziest developer. Why would you do extra work to upgrade a web part when all you need to do is maybe maintain it, right? And you don't want to introduce new dependencies and new security issues and new things with every single time that you update it. So I do like to work with multiple versions of Node. And one of the ways that people do that is with something called a Node version manager. In fact, there is one Node version manager called NVM. But the problem is with NVM, and I know I'm introducing a product that right away I'm telling you there's a problem with it, but there's a reason. Most people will rely on NVM to run multiple versions of Node. But the problem with NVM is that it installs to C program files Node.js, and then it creates a shortcut to your app data file where it points to program Node.js, program files Node.js. When you switch versions, guess what it does? It says, hey, I need permission to make changes to your version of Node, which means you need to have administrative privileges to do that. So Node Version Manager is fantastic if you have administrative privilege, but it's not so amazing if you don't have administrative privileges to your workstation. Now, there is another solution. So instead of using NVM, look at something called NVS. Node version switcher, I guess. I'm not very good with acronyms. And Node version switcher is something that's available on GitHub. So you can go to github.com/jsongin/nvs to install the version of Node version switcher. And the cool thing about that is that it gives you an installer that you can use right away. It also gives you instructions on how to install it using winget if you have winget installed on your machine. And it gives you instructions on how to install it manually as well. So if anything's blocking you, as long as you have some access to your machine to be able to write some files on your personal folders, you can actually install NVS and you can make it work. And they walk you through all the steps. So now that's great because you're able to start using Node version switcher on a machine where you don't have administrative privileges. Let me show you an example of this. So here I have SPFx, my SPFx folder. And if I type NVS menu, right away, it shows me the versions of Node that I have already installed, and it gives me the ability to install a new version. Not sure what's happening here with my, there you go. I can say install more versions, and then I can go through all the versions that are available to me. Now, of course, if you're going to an older version of Node, you're going to be scrolling for a while, but it is possible for you to just go and type the version number that you want to use as well. So once you select the key that the version that you want, so I'll use 1821. What it does is it starts downloading it for you, and it will automatically install it for you. Now, it's not going to activate it right away. You have to activate it because, again, it's designed to switch. But the cool thing is now I should be able to just type, NVS menu, and it will show me the latest version. And if I type node-v, it's now showing me the version that I'm running is the version I just installed. And again, this was done without having administrative privileges to my machine. Now, if I look at a side-by-side comparison here. So if I run NVM 1821 and I install it and I say node, right, it'll tell me, okay, yeah, you're running 1821. And I know it's a little small to show, but one thing I wanted to show is the cool thing about NVS is it completely sets up a different environment with every instance of your terminal that you create. So right side by side here, if I open another terminal and I run another instance of NVS, or another version of Node. See, it tells me Node doesn't exist, but I just had a terminal window open. If I do NVS menu and I install a new version of Node, side by side again, this is two different instances of terminal. I'm able to have two different versions running side by side. This can start enabling you to do some really cool stuff. Because what if you had two versions of Visual Studio Code open? One which is the latest version, that's a project you're working on, and one is a sample that you want to see how they're doing it. And the sample was built in an older version of SPFx, running an older version of Node, and the version you're working on is a newer version of Node and SPFx. And we'll actually show you that very shortly. All right, so the other thing that I can do, if I know that all the time I'm going to be working on a basic version of Node, like 1.18, or something like that, I can just type NVS link. And what that will do is we'll say, when you don't know what version of Node to use, this is the default version I want you to use. And that can be really powerful as well, because trust me, when you first get started with NVS, it can be annoying every time you launch a window that it goes like, I don't know what Node is. So you do NVS link, it'll have a default version. And that's great because you can save some time. Now, the cool thing about doing this, so if I do again NVS link, it'll enable the version that I want to use. But the cool thing about that is if I go now to my project, I've got the sniffles today. And I look at Node version, right? I've got version 1821. Now, if I switch to Visual Studio Code, and again, the purpose of this presentation is how to set up your workstation without having administrative privileges. You may not have Visual Studio Code installed in your machine. And you may be in a position where you have to beg the IT gods to install Visual Studio Code for you. But luckily, Visual Studio Code, if you go to code.visualstudio.com/download, you can actually download. Most people will just usually kind of use the default option, this one, right? But if you actually go down in the options, you'll see that there's a version for user install. And that is a version that you can install as a user without administrative privileges. And that is cool. And that's good for locked workstations and things like that, because it's really acting as if you were installing a document in your documents folder, right? And hopefully your organization doesn't stop you from creating documents in your documents folder, although I wouldn't guarantee that's always the case. The other thing that you can do is you can actually download the zip version of Visual Studio Code, and you can run it from anywhere. So I usually have on my backpack, I usually have a USB stick that has VS Code running. Well, it's not running, but it's installed. If I ever need VS Code on a machine, I can just run it like that. Okay, so now we've been able to install Node and switch between versions of Node without having permissions to your machine. And we've been able to install VS Code without having permissions on our machine. So let's look at now what I can do with that. So, and I realize it's going to be a little hard to see in the bottom, but if in the bottom here, if I say NVS menu, it actually lists me the options like it would in a regular terminal window, because it's integrated into all your terminals. Very cool, right? So I could set it up now, put the version of Node that I want to use. If I had a default version of Node, that's where it would show up as well. But now there's this cool extension that I can use, which is the SharePoint Framework Toolkit, which is something that allows me to actually go put all the tools that I need to be able to manage and build SPFx solutions within VS Code. And because I'm running VS Code as a user, my extensions also get installed as a user. I don't have to have special permissions. I don't have to be God of my machine to be able to install this extension. And this is an extension that Adam was talking about that allows you to do some cool stuff. And one of the things that it does is it looks at the dependencies that are on my machine. So, and if any of you have ever been to the instructions on how to get started with SharePoint Framework, there's like about 17 pages long of command lines you need to install. I'm exaggerating, it's not 17, but it's not that far, right? There's a lot of commands that you need to install, a lot of dependencies, a lot of npm install. You can actually do that all automatically with using the extension. But there is one little trick. If you go to the settings of the SharePoint Framework Toolkit, there is an option that allows you to control the version of Node that you're going to be using, or the Node version manager. So by default, it assumes that everyone's using NVM. But if you're using NVS on your machine, you can just go to the settings and say, I will be using NVS. And it will now switch it automatically. And my presentation has decided to continue moving without me, so I'll try to catch up here. One of the things that you can do, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen here, but one of the things you can do as well is you can tell when you debug your web parts or your web parts or your applications, you can also tell it to use NVS built in. So let's see here if I can zoom in, make it easier to read. But in my launch.json, to launch my debug application, I can actually say that I want to use version nvs.cmd, the command that I run to launch NVS, and I can specify the version that I want. Now remember that launch.json and some of the settings can actually be associated with the project you're working on. So that allows you to have a project that debugs one way, and then another project that debugs a different way with different version of Node and things like that. But wait, if you order now, you also get the ability to go to the SPFx samples, right? So we were showing earlier, you go to aka.ms/SPFx-webpart, you have a list of web parts. I'll pick a web part here, one of the latest web parts that was deployed. And one of the cool things with every sample, if you're not familiar with how to use GitHub or things like that, we give you the option to actually download the version, the sample directly on your machine as a zip file. So if I go to download zip, come on there, right there, yeah. I can actually just get the zip file, put it on my machine, and I can use that as inspiration. Because that's, again, these samples are not designed to be production solutions that you're going to use automatically to your machine. You're supposed to be using it to learn and to start your tasks, right? Not to say that they're not production ready, but the point is to teach you how to use them. Most updated, most recent samples use an NVM-RC file on the solution folder. An NVM-RC file, what it does is it tells Visual Studio Code and NVM and NVS what version of node you want to use. So automatically for you, we go, when we process these samples, we look at the version of node. So the version that's for this web part is 18.17.1. But if I go download another sample here, that's an older sample. This one uses a different version of Node. So I'll do the same thing. I'll download it. If I can find a download button. There you go. I'll unzip it. And then if I open it, this one also has an NVM RC, but this one uses a 18.18.0. So again, it's a different version of Node. But all I need to do when I start my command line is I type NVS space use, and that tells it to go use the current version of the solution automatically. And so that way I'm able to have multiple versions. And so here I stopped the whole downloading because I was downloading over hotel Wi-Fi. And as much as I want to stay with you for the next hour, I figured I'd stop the video here. But this is now how you can use the tools with every solution. And the cool thing is, once you're inside of a project and you have the SharePoint toolkit added, it automatically enables all the options for you that you can run, like debug and analyze the dependencies and things like that. And it will use the version of Node that's associated to that project. All right. Let's wrap this up so we can give my friend Paolo some time. But today I've showed you how you can actually start configuring your workstation with installing Node, Node version switcher, and Visual Studio Code, as well as the SharePoint toolkit, to be able to build WebPart without having any administrative permissions to your machine. Later session, we'll talk about how you can deal with things like NPM JS and things like that, because your organization may have firewall rules that prevent you from being able to download the dependencies. But that's for another show. That's it for me. Let's pass it to Paolo.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Hugo. Woo! Woo! All right. So there's some questions in the chat. So while Paolo gets set up, one of the things that was asked was, well, is this overkill, right? Is it really necessary to be able to swap between these versions of Node? You may work in a small organization. You may work with just one team where you kind of own everything. So maybe everything is upgrading by itself or all together or whatever, and that's fine. But if you're in an organization as a consultant, or if you're working in a massive organization where over time you will end up dealing with different versions of Node and different versions of SPFx, and you may not have the luxury to upgrade every single one of your solutions just in time all together while you're trying to keep everything in sync. You may have to do them one at a time or over time. And so this allows you to hot swap between without having to reinstall Node, without having to use multiple machines or virtual machines. And it's a great way to test things. As Hugo had said, if you're downloading sample web parts, or you're trying to utilize different samples that you've gotten maybe from internal or external, and you want to test them, you can isolate all of your Node packages on a global level to make sure that you're not maybe commandeering or overwriting other versions of Node or other Node packages that might be problematic to what you're trying to do in your day-to-day work. So it really provides a utility belt for you to be able to swap between different samples production web parts or solutions that you're building and not feel like you're having to reinstall software all the time. Or again, if you're wanting to test something out on a new feature of SPFx or some new node module that you just found that you want to play with, but you're not quite sure if it's going to play nice with all of your other node modules, it's a great opportunity to do that. All right, Paolo is set up. I see it. Building complex SPFx powered solutions with Microsoft 365, possibilities, limits, and opportunities.
The longest title ever, right?
Yes.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yep, thumbs up. Yep.
Okay, thumbs up. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, welcome to this demo about building complex SPFx power solution with Microsoft 365 and the possibilities, limits, and opportunities. I'm Paolo. I don't want to bother you about who I am, so let's go straight to the content. And yes, today we are going to have a look at a solution which is called Contoso Retail. It is a sample solution which is available in the sample gallery. I will show you later where you can find it with the whole source code. And it is a, I would say, quite complex sample solution. Complex because it is made of multiple components, as you will see soon. And the overall goal of this sample solution is to show you the art of possible with SharePoint Framework and with the Microsoft 365 ecosystem in general. In fact, the idea is to have an hypothetical fashion retail company which is willing to have some Microsoft 365-based tools to manage and monitor the sales of the retail company, the revenues, the returns of products, and stuff like that, whether using the desktop experience, so for example, Teams or SharePoint Online, on a desktop environment, as well as using, for example, an adaptive card extension in Microsoft Viva Connections, but also being able to use an extension in Teams in order to search for the product in the product inventory of this hypothetical Contoso retail company. So the idea is to give you an overview of what you can and what you should do to build such a solution. And from a front-end technology point of view, we created a bunch of web parts with SharePoint Framework because we wanted to have an easy development experience in order to being able to host those web parts both in SharePoint Online and in Microsoft Teams as a personal app, as you will see soon. At the same time, we use exactly the same SharePoint Framework solution to also build an adaptive card extension. So from a packaging and deployment point of view, you can have one solution that you deploy at the customer site, and it will give you the option and the opportunity to run your code both in Viva Connections and in SharePoint and in Teams. Plus, we created a Teams messaging extension using the Teams toolkit, so not using SharePoint Framework, because right now, SharePoint Framework is a great framework for building solutions, which will be automatically hosted in the SharePoint Online environment. But it is missing one component, which is the backend infrastructure. So it is a client-side technology. It is great for building client-side based solutions, but there is no backend that you can build with SharePoint Framework. And as such, you need to have something else to create and build a backend. In my demo, in this scenario, I decided to use, as I will show you soon, a backend infrastructure based on an Azure function, which is providing a set of REST APIs secured with Entra ID and also described by an open API endpoint, so that this hypothetical backend is based on a demo set of products, and it is providing via a REST API all of the content to the client-side infrastructure of SharePoint Framework, as well as to a messaging extension built with the Teams toolkit, and as well as to any other solution in Microsoft 365 willing to consume this API via REST and using Entra ID for security. And in fact, just to give you an idea, even if we will not dig into it now, but you can rely on the same REST API that we're using in the solution also to create, for example, a plugin for Copilot, or you can use it to extend the Power Platform with the Power Platform connector. So if you do a proper design of your solution, you can benefit of that design, and you can reuse as much as you can all of your efforts to build a solution which will be available across the whole ecosystem of Microsoft 365. Just to give you an idea, This is the architectural diagram, really high-level architectural diagram of the solution, where for sure we have Entra ID in place, because all of this security is based on Entra ID, which is taking care of the user authentication and issuing the tokens and securing the communication across all of the communication channels. Then we have SharePoint Framework Web Parts, which can be used to host the web parts in SharePoint Online or for hosting the personal app in Teams, as well as for the Viva Connection adaptive card. And then we have an Azure App Service, which is in between the Teams extensibility or the Copilot extensibility and the backend Azure function, because as I was telling you, there are scenarios where we need to have a backend infrastructure, and for that we cannot simply rely on SPFx. So now that we have a big picture of the solution, let's move to the demo environment, and I will show you first of all how the demo behaves in the UI, and then we will see how we can build such a solution. So let me find the right screen, which is this one. Okay, so this is the personal app in Teams. What you are looking at is actually a web part hosted in a tab in a personal app of Teams. And as you can see, I can switch across different tabs in this application. And I can get for every single tab a different web part, SharePoint Framework web part running, providing me some custom content for this hypothetical company. If I go to the inventory one, I can browse through the inventory of my product. I can select the product and see the details of the product. Okay, so this is the user experience inside Teams as a personal app. And to start this experience, the user can have an icon here in the left bar of Teams. But what if your end users are used to work in an environment which is, for example, Outlook.com? So they can go to Outlook.com and they can have exactly the same experience. So let's say they are managing their email messages and they want to move to Contoso Retail. They can do that. And they have exactly the same experience as before, but now hosted inside Outlook.com. And what if your end users want to use Office portal? So the portal.office.com. Again, they can be in their homepage, they can be managing their documents in OneDrive or wherever else, and then they can simply say apps and give me the Contoso Retail dashboard again. This is what is possible nowadays with SharePoint Framework. If you will properly define a manifest, and I will show you how to do that, so that you can host your solution in multiple and different contexts, which is really powerful. Plus, in this solution, we also have, as I told you, the adaptive card extension experience. For mobile users, it is really useful and powerful to being able to have an adaptive card, which will show them information about the products in the product inventory. They can also browse the whole list of products. And again, by leveraging the capabilities that are offered by the integration between Teams and SharePoint Framework, this adaptive card extension has been built with SPFx. I can click on any of these products, and I will be brought to Teams, and I will target the specific product page of the product that I selected. So we can have deep links from adaptive card extensions to Teams to give a connected experience to the end users and bringing them to the right content in the right place inside Teams. And that's just to give an idea of the so-called art of possible with SPFx. Plus the fact that we can also do stuff like that. Let's say that I'm in a chat with one of my colleagues, my colleague Jessica, for example, and I want to have a chat with her and to share some information about a product that I have in my inventory. Again, with a messaging extension, I can click on the plus button in the message composition area. I can search for Contoso, and I can activate my Contoso Retail extension. And here I can search for some products, like the denim products that I have in my product inventory. Let's say that I want to have a chat with her about this product. I can simply select the product. I can write something or not. I'm lazy, I will not. But okay, I can use an adaptive card inside the chat, and the content of the adaptive card has been generated by the extension that I created with the Teams Toolkit inside my solution. So you see, plenty of options to create really connected solutions in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So how did I build this solution? Let me switch to Visual Studio Code, and let's start from the SharePoint Framework solution. Here we have, and let me sit down, otherwise it will be quite complex for me to move around the code base. This is a SharePoint Framework solution. It is a SharePoint Framework solution based right now on version 1.18.2. It will soon become 1.19 now that it has been released. And we have, for every single tab in the personal app in Teams, a web part. So we have the dashboard, we have the home, and we have the inventory. These are the three tabs that you see right here, home, dashboard, and inventory. For each of them, we have a web part. Now, let's get just one for the sake of simplicity, like the home one, for example. This is a web part of SharePoint Framework, which will simply render its content through a React component, which we can find right here, the retail home TSX. In this component, we are using the PMP controls so that we are relying on the dashboard control, which is the one that gives you this nice UI. Let me go to the home, where you have multiple widgets inside a dashboard. You can easily build this kind of experience simply relying on the dashboard control provided by the PMP React controls. And in order to do that, you simply need to build for every single widget that you want to create a React component that will host that widget. So for example, if you want to have a look at what we do for the return volume widget, this one with the chart and everything else, we simply build the return volumes widget as a control that I created in a library of React components that I share in the whole solution so that I can reuse exactly the same React component wherever I need it. So return volumes, again, will rely one more time on the PMP controls to render the chart with all of the information, and somewhere here there should be and here it is, the chart control from PMP controls that I'm using to render the chart with all of the information. And the same story applies to all of the widgets in all of the dashboards. Now, what is interesting to notice from an architectural point of view is that because we are using the same dataset and the same backend services in all of the web parts, in all of the widgets, rather than having the same code in every single component, we decided to use a backend service from an architectural point of view. So I defined an iRetail data service interface in my SharePoint Framework solution, and I implemented that service into a class. This class, let me go to the top of the class, relies on the service scope model of SharePoint Framework. So basically, I have a constructor for this service class, which will get the service scope of SharePoint Framework as an input. And through that one, I will be able to create an instance of the services that I use or the types that I use in SharePoint Framework to consume securely via Entra ID and external API, like the AD HTTP client. So when I am in the home web part, for example, in the init method, on init method of my web part, I simply say that through the context of SharePoint Framework and through the service scope of the context, I want to consume the setting service or the retail data service of my application. I will get back an instance of that specific service, and then I will be able to use all of the functions provided by my data service, like load the return volumes, load the inventory, and stuff like that. So for every single functionality that I want to use, I have a specific method in my data service class. Now, the interesting part of the story is that I can use exactly the same service class also from the adaptive card extension, because it is inside the same project. So if I have a look at the same solution, I also have an adaptive card extension built with SharePoint Framework in this package. And in this one, I still rely on the same model. So this.context.service-scope, and I still get the instance of the settings and of the data service. Then I can use the information retrieved through the service inside my adaptive cards to build the UI and to have, for example, this supposed to be nice UI with the carousel of the products, which I can simply have using in here a timer, a set interval, which will switch from one product to another based on a time. And it will simply rely on a list of products downloaded through the REST API in the backend using my data service class. Now, when I want to deploy this solution, the Teams extension and the Office and Outlook extension are just based on a manifest file that I have right here, hopefully. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. In the Teams folder, I have a manifest file that I defined. And in this manifest file, I have first of all, the version 1.16 of the manifest at least. And in the static tab section, I simply declare all of the React components or the web part that I have in my solution that will be used to render every single tab. So the home tab will reference as the content URL the ID of my web part, this one, which is exactly the ID of the web part that I have in my solution right here. This is the ID of my web part. And I will do the same for every web part that I have in my solution. So every single tab will simply render one web part each. By using this, at least this version of the manifest schema, and by using this syntax, I can then, out of the box, have the capability to host my solution, not only in Teams, but also in Outlook and in Office. Plus the fact that I need to consume my backend API. And in order to be able to do that, my backend API, as I told you, is secured through Entra ID. So in the package solution file of my SharePoint Framework solution, I have to declare this section, the Web API Permission Request section, in which I say that for the Contoso retail resource, which is the API registered in Entra ID, I want to have the permission scope to consume that application. Plus, this is something that was introduced in SharePoint Framework, I think in version 1.17, but I might be mistaken. I can also declare the ID of the app and the return URL so that when an administrator will get my package and install the package in the app catalog, they will be able to do an automatic grant of the permissions to my application and a registration of my application in their tenant. So that if you are building a multi-tenant solution, you can easily deploy the solution on any target tenant, and the SharePoint online backend infrastructure will take care of prompting the administrator who is installing your package in the app catalog to register your multi-tenant application in their target tenant and to grant the permission in that target tenant. That's for the SharePoint Framework solution. The extension built with Teams Toolkit on the other side is the following one. Let me open this one as well. This is just a Teams Toolkit solution. And what I want to show you is just that in the search messaging extension that was created automatically using the Teams Toolkit UI, I have in my search application the handling of the handle Teams messaging extension query method, which is the one triggered whenever a user will start searching for something through your search messaging extension. And in this one, we can rely again on SPFx and on the Teams Toolkit capabilities to do what? To make a REST request against the backend API, which is hosted on Azure, and to use the on behalf user context, meaning that whatever I will search for in the UI of Teams right here will be also secured with the security context of the current user. So if this hypothetical list of products is filtered by security based on who the user is, we can have such kind of capability in our search extension so that we can just return all of the products that the current user is allowed to see. We can do filtering, ACL, okay, access control lists for our product. We get the on behalf token and we simply consume our API, and then we build a list of adaptive cards, which can be one or more, which will provide the actual content of every single product searched by the user. Okay, so this was just to give you an idea of, again, the art of possible. You have some useful links if you want. Thanks for attending this demo, and back to you, David. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paolo. Excellent stuff for everyone on the call. Let's get this wrapped up. All right. Well, how about a round of applause for our two awesome presenters today, Hugo and Paolo? Woo! Woo! All right. Thank you both for taking time out of your conference as well to attend here live with everyone. For those online and those in the room, we are part of the Cool Kids Club now with Discord, right? So we've got a server set up. It's a great one-stop shop area for us all to collaborate on a number of broad spectrum topics, all within our community. Lots of folks are always in there. I think we have over 1,900 now, over 2,000. All right. We get a set of steak knives now. So excellent. We're excited. So go and join that, aka.ms/community/discord. And of course, we always want to get some feedback from you as well. So please fill in this if you've not already filled it in. If you have already filled it in and you like the calls and you are appreciative of them, it helps our management know that they are useful for everyone. And there is that Discord slide as well. So if you got a QR code and want to join it, again, aka.ms/community/discord. The recording will be out within 24 hours on YouTube on the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform Community YouTube channel. If you're on Teams right now or you're joining in the room, you will not be able to download it if you're in the call because it's only for Microsoft employees. But if you go to ak.ms/community/videos and you subscribe to our YouTube channels, you will be alerted as soon as it is made available. It will drop within 24 hours. If you follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or at M365PNP, we will also shout from the rooftops there as soon as it is available. The next Viva Connections SharePoint Framework call is 2 weeks from today, May 16th. We'll all be back in our respective homes at that point, unless we get stuck here in Orlando. But we will see you there in 2 weeks. The next M365 and Power Platform call is a week from today, same bat channel, same bat time, May 9th, 7 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and all of you in the room. Have a great rest of your conference and a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye. Woo!
Bye. Thank you.